is the river, He is the one who brings life. He's living water, He's flowing out of me. He is the river, He is the one who brings life. He's living water, and it flow right out of me. Oh, are you thirsty? He's the answer. He is all we need. God, you're all we need. Are you thirsty? He's the answer. He is all we need. God, you're all we need. Yeah. He is the river, He is the one who brings life. He's the living water, He's flowing out of me. He is the river, He is the one who brings life. He is living water, and it flow right out of me. Oh, are you thirsty? He's the answer. Make glad city of our God, a holy place where the Most High dwells. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of our God, a holy place where the Most High dwells. There is a river whose streams make glad where the Most High dwells. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of our God, a holy place where the Most High dwells. Yeah. thirst again, never thirst again. When we drink from you, Lord, never thirst again, never thirst again, never thirst again, never thirst again. Oh Lord, that's our prayer, to never thirst again, to never thirst again. Oh, never thirst again, never thirst again. This is our prayer, this is our prayer, Lord, to never thirst again. We need you, God. We need you, God. We have never not needed you, Lord. We have never not needed you, Lord. We go from glory to glory, from glory to glory, from glory to glory, into your resurrection power, from death into life. Oh, from death into life. Oh, oh, from death into life. Oh, from death into life. Oh, we go from death into life. Oh, we die with you and we rise with you, oh Lord. From glory to glory, from glory to glory, from glory to glory. Here is love, vast as the ocean, loving kindness as the flood. When the Prince on life our ransom shed for us his precious blood. And here is love will not remember, and who can cease to sing his praise? He will never be forgotten throughout heaven's eternal day. Here is love, vast as the ocean, loving kindness as the flood. When the Prince on life our ransom shed for us his precious blood. And here is love, vast as the ocean, loving kindness as the flood. When the Prince on life our ransom shed for us his precious blood. And who is love will not remember, who can cease to sing his praise, and he can never be forgotten throughout heaven's eternal day. crucifixion, fountains open deep and wide. Through the floodgates of God's mercy flowed a vast and gracious tide. Grace and love like mighty rivers pour incessant from above, and heaven's peace and perfect justice kissed a guilty world in love. And who is love will not remember, who can cease to sing his praise, and he can never be forgotten throughout heaven's eternal day. Love will not remember, who can cease to sing his praise, and he can never be forgotten throughout heaven's eternal days. There is no one higher than you. There is no one higher. There is nothing higher than your love. There is nothing greater than your mercy. There is nothing greater than your faithfulness. Oh Lord, there is no one like you. 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 There There is no one like you, my friend. What a friend we have in Jesus. All our sins and burdens bear. What a privilege to have, to take it to the Lord in prayer. What a privilege to carry, take it to the Lord in prayer. What a friend we have in Jesus. All my sins and what a privilege to be your friend, to take it to the Lord in prayer. What a privilege, what a privilege to share in the fellowship of your sufferings. Oh Lord, you are acquainted with all my ways. You knew me before I was in the mother's womb. You knew me. You have been where I have been. You understand my pain and my sufferings, oh Lord. And you broke it at the cross. Oh Lord, you broke the power of all my sin at the cross of Calvary. Oh Lord, you broke the chains. You broke the chains. You broke the chains of all my sin. You broke the chains. You broke the chains. You broke the chains of all my sin.
We'll just reflect on communion for a couple of minutes before we take it together. You might be a bit like me. I don't do very well with uncertainty. I don't like uncertainty. I like to know exactly what's going on in most aspects of my life. I'm pretty organised. I generally like to have a good plan for most things. And if this last couple of years have taught people anything, it's that certainty can't really be achieved at any point. Most people did not see, Nostradamus didn't see COVID-19 coming, and neither did most other people that were predicting what was coming. We don't tend to have very much control over what's coming up in the future, yet we try to. We want to believe that we've got the future in our hands. When I was a little kid, like most little kids, I got really excited in the lead up to Christmas. I'd be mostly about the presents, let's be real. I'd be really, really excited about what was to come, and sometimes I knew what I was getting, maybe because I went peeking, or maybe because it was something that I'd, really asked for and I knew it was happening, or I'd been involved in choosing it, or whatever was going on. But as I think back about it, and I do this a lot now that I've got the kids starting to come through, I think the Christmases where I was the most excited were the ones where I didn't know what was coming. I was really excited because all I knew, I didn't know what was coming, but I knew that what was coming was going to be good. I had no idea what was coming, but I knew what was coming was going to be good. And I knew it was going to be good because of two things. Number one, I knew who it was coming from, whether that be either my parents or Santa, depending on the age that I was at the time. Either one I trusted. And secondly, because of remembrance, because of looking back and thinking about what I'd seen before. It's very similar in most other aspects of Christian life. When the disciples came to have that Passover meal with Jesus, they didn't know what was coming. In fact, the time that they were in was pretty intense. They probably didn't know it was going to get as bad as it was going to get, to be honest, most of them. But they knew that tensions were high. They knew that there were a lot of people who didn't like Jesus. He'd thrown the tables over in the temple that week, so, that's going to rile up all of the people. He knew the disciples knew that things were getting tense, and yet they were able to stay in this place of trust and anticipation because they knew that what was coming was going to be good. They believed that he was the Messiah, and they knew that what was coming was good. And they knew that what was coming was good because they knew who it was coming from, God, and they knew from past experience. They were taking part in a Passover meal. What was Passover all about? It was about remembering how God had looked after them and led them out of Egypt in the end. I think it's really important for us where, let's be real, we don't know what's coming. All of us might think we have good plans for tomorrow. I think I know what's coming up tomorrow. I know what classes I've got, in what period. I know what time I should be home. I know when I've got a rehearsal, and I know what my kids are generally meant to be doing. But really, anything could happen tomorrow. Tomorrow could be the start of who knows what, We really have no idea what's going on. But I can come with hopeful anticipation about what tomorrow is going to look like, not because I have any certainty as to how it's going to play out, but because I know who it's coming from, and because of remembrance. I can look back and see what God has been like. This is what the disciples were doing. This is why Jesus says, remember. And we look back and we can see what God has done. He has given his body. He has given his blood for us. We can look back and see that he led his people out of Egypt and all these other things. And we've got our own Exodus moments in our lives, right? We've got our own rubbish moments too. So did Israel. But God wasn't getting them to keep looking back and asking about the 35th time they'd passed that rock in the desert, but to look back at what he'd done in proving who he was. As a kid, I knew that what was coming at Christmas was going to be good because I knew who it was coming from and I knew from experience what they were like. And so I just want to leave you with that thought tonight. I always point over here because this is where communion used to sit. Now you just have it on your chairs. But as you take the bread and the juice tonight, just take a moment to remember who your future is coming from, who's got it in his hands. A trustworthy God, a God who looks like Jesus on the cross. And to remember what he's been like through your past. Maybe just meditate for a moment as you take it on a moment that was an Exodus moment for you, when God proved his faithfulness to you. And if you can't think of one right now, you're part of, as Tanya mentioned during the worship, this lineage of generations of people who have followed God. Take one of theirs. When you don't have your own Exodus moment, you are part of a family. This is not just about your faith. This is the whole thing. Take somebody else's Exodus moment. Take Israelites' Exodus moment. Take any of the disciples' Exodus moments. And remember those. And in those we can go, Jesus, I give you my future. I give you what I have because I trust that you are good and I trust that you will look after me. He is faithful. He is kind. He will not let your foot slip. So let's just remember that as we come and take the body and the blood tonight.
Face will be seen as the sun that rises, and as the dawn comes, you will come. Yeah, you will be known throughout every generation. Your love will be shown to every nation. Your face will be seen.
Good to be here. I just want to acknowledge Libby Birch, who retired this week. And she retired from nursing. She hasn't really retired. She's just stopped taking wages. She's a wonderful woman, really. And has been a great example in motherhood, in ministry, and she's now going to take it easy looking after all her grandchildren, so that'll be good for her. The second life. We've got the wonderful Julie Rourke here tonight. I was praying about you, Julie, and this is your year of Jubilee coming. This is a year of tremendous breakthrough for you, and your unbelief will not be able to stop it, because God has intention towards you breakthrough. You're going to get an outstanding job opportunity this year. It's going to be surprising. You're not going to have to bulldoze your way in. It's going to come to you. Because over the last few years, the Lord has been training you in the school of adversity, and you have learnt the lessons well. Do not try and fix what God's not fixing. What God has broken, let it remain broken, and he's going to give you an opportunity that'll be remarkable. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be anywhere, really. But I'm glad to be here. My wife gave a prophetic word tonight. You've got to ask yourself, is God saying that? Did God say that? And if God said that, what am I going to do about it? What's my response to God saying, I want you to be going out? You know, I want you to be reaching out beyond yourself. I'm going to share tonight on really hearing the voice of God and acting on it. And how do you activate spiritual gifts in yourself? How do you do that? Because God has poured out his gifts upon people. And he's poured them out upon you. And many of you have allowed those gifts to remain dormant or even fall into disuse because you've got sick of it, you've had a few setbacks. You've tried to give a prophetic word and it's turned out to be in the flesh, or you've prayed for the sick and they died. You know, and so you've lost confidence in the actual ability of God to enter your life, enter your history. I can tell you something, beloved. A church that cannot operate in the power of God brings nothing to the world except a good story. And what we're saying to people is you're going to get it all when you die. When you die, you're going to go to heaven and be very happy. Up to then, get by the best you can. And that's not the gospel. The gospel's good news, not bad news. It's not future news, it's now news. As Tanya and I have grown in understanding of what it means to be parents, and it's taken us a long time to really learn the truths of that. But I can tell you something. When we pray into our family, we see results. Instant results. Because we carry the patriarchal blessing on us to be able to pray for our family. And so we've had little grandkids sick and pray and the sickness leaves. We have financial things in our children, we pray and the burdens are lifted. We have seemingly relational stuff happen that is incurable and unfixable except God does something about it. And one of the things that I have done in my life is when I get in trouble, I remember. I remember what God has done and how He's done it and when He's done it. And I'll share some of those things tonight. But how do we activate our spiritual senses? How do we get like Abraham when he's told he's going to be the father of many nations? And it said he didn't consider his body. He didn't consider the fact that he was past his best. Sarah didn't consider the fact that she had gone through menopause. That was not her consideration. Her consideration was the promises of God. Matthew 6, when you pray, go into your private room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father sees in secret, and He will reward you openly. There's an invitation to go into the double-doored bedroom of your life where you open the door of the bedroom and go in, and then inside you open the door of the secret place and go into that. So you're in a place where you go beyond your bedroom, the bed, the chest of drawers or whatever. You go beyond into a secret place. A place within yourself where you meet God, where you hear His voice, where He speaks to you, where you see the things of God, where you see the future. And I'm reminded, I'm down here, we decide that we're going to pray all night, right? So we have a big roster. And once the first 2 weeks went, the roster was getting pretty thin on. So I had the night shift every night. And I was down here, and this is a spooky place of a night. I don't believe in ghosts, but I do believe in the dark side. So I'm down here and the wind's howling and there's a tree branch going across the road. I've checked the ladies' toilet. I've checked the men's toilet. I'm checking where's these noises coming from. And I'm praying. Like I probably that night prayed at least 4 or 5 hours in tongues. And I knew something was going to happen, but I walked to this window here and I threw open the curtains, and standing there was a giant golden angel, and he was leading a golden camel, and he had going from there And I can see it now. He had like 1,000 camels going all the way up into the sky, and they were full of stuff. They had like big packages on their back. And they'd come here and they were over there in that clearing there, and they were unpacking the camels. And I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm an angel of provision, and I've come to collect the gifts that the Church of Jesus Christ has not used, and I'm going to redistribute them to the hungry." And that's a profound experience. And you can't say you're going to get that experience every time you pray. But surely you're going to get it sometime. Surely something's going to happen. And so I know that to enter the secret place, this place of intimacy with God, no matter what people think about you, no matter what they say about you, and I've had plenty said about me and plenty thought about me that people were afraid to say, but can I tell you, they can't stop you being intimate with God. They can't stop your mind going to heaven. They can't do anything about it. It makes people wild that they can't do anything about it. It does. Because the reality is, I've got plenty wrong with me, and so do you, but I am a son above all. Amen. And I had a father who took me by adoption. By choice he chose me and chose you. God chose you. You didn't do the choosing. He chose you. And some other people might say, "Well, how did you get a start?" I can remember at school, they'd line up the teams, Dan, and when people had picked the sides, I'd be saying, pick me, but they never did because I ran slow, I couldn't catch a ball and I couldn't throw one. So I used to get the sympathy vote. And not having that, not being picked, not having that happen, that would make me angry. So I'd be ready to fight then. So when they wanted someone to fight, I would be called on and never disappointed them. But the reality is, we're chosen by God. He loves us. He likes us. He likes to hang around you. He doesn't say, "Oh, not Julie again. Oh, not Julie." No, he doesn't. He says, "That's my beloved one coming. That's my beloved." And out of that abundance of intimacy, Tanya and I have seen remarkable stuff. And I remind her because, this has been tough. This has been tough, this lockdown, for all of us. Tough for our emotional well-being. Tough to keep peace in your family. Tough to feel at peace yourself. But we've seen remarkable things happen. Remarkable things. I've been in places where I have been fearsomely used by God. And you know what? When I look at the life of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, I look at these ages, God is timeless. He doesn't have a use-by date on you. He doesn't say, "Look, the Holy Ghost is going to run out your feet." No, as you empty yourself, you become more full of God. And you get to the stage where you let God talk to you. And when you live with a wife that's spirit-filled, God talks to her too. So she provides insight and revelation into a family, and even checks and balances for a headstrong husband. But the reality is, just this week, we had a little granddaughter. She's there. She has a high temperature that would not come down. covered in hives. She's in England, right? And my son rang because whenever they're in trouble, he rings for prayer. And he's got a Jewish wife, and so they're celebrating Hanukkah and get ready to be in the nativity play. They've got a lot of... But when this happens in the family, when she comes from the root of Jesse and there's Christianity in the family, that little girl got on the phone and we commanded the temperature down in the name of Jesus, and that's what happened. That's what happened. And that just doesn't happen once. That happens every time. Because we are carriers of the Christ. And we have not had to beg him to let us carry him. Because the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead dwells in us. So part of our very DNA, part of our very spiritual DNA is the presence of the Christ risen Spirit. And we can do all things. And so we've come here, we've laboured for 20 years, and we will hear the words, "Well done, good and faithful servants." That's what we'll hear. Now, while ever you're trying to be someone's cup of tea, you might miss the boat. Because you've got to be able to do the business. What the church has done, it's become a referral centre for everyone else. So, Susie has been not well for some time, and some of the stuff has been very serious. And I'm not here to give Susie's medical diagnosis, but let me tell you, I've seen God touch her life over and over and over and over again. Now, the church can be a referral centre, and they can get you going. You can't pay your bills or something's happening. Financial planner. Not well emotionally. Psychologist, psychiatrist, counsellor. Marriage counsellor. Grief counsellor. Fastest growing profession in the world at the moment is counselling. If you want to get a good job, become a counsellor. But the reality is, because of my own background, I've been counselled by experts, and they almost drove me mad. Because the father of the counselling movement is Sigmund Freud, an occult practitioner, or Carl Jung, another occult practitioner. So they come from those fields. They come from those streams. Now, I'm not saying a wise listener can't help you. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that only God can change your heart. Only God can change you. And you have to many of us have to undergo a spiritual revolution by encountering the Word of God and being challenged by what it says. And allowing it to challenge us and then yielding to God, saying, okay, I'll do it your way, but you have to help me. I can't do what I have to do to be what you want me to be. I can't do it. I can't change my mind and even keep my mind on the job for 5 seconds. And in the middle of this, God will do something with you that'll shock you. Tanya and I go to this Catholic prayer meeting at Ryde, and we're there, and we were full of God, and we worshipped God. We had, Gabrielle Walker and the early worship team here. We went with us there. We worshipped God, and all of a sudden, I'm walking along a prayer line and people are falling over as I walk past them. No one was more shocked than me. Such was the reality in that instance, and I've seen it happen many times, that the presence of God in me was leaking over people. Now, you can't fake that, you can't make it happen, but you can position yourself. An old Pentecostal pastor, Pastor Gordon Gibbs, used to say to me, stand under the glory spout and let the glory flow out. And these gracelets, these encounters with God are meant to be able to carry you, Julie, from one tragedy, one difficulty to the next. Because you can say to God, do it again. I don't believe that I've seen the highlights of my life so that they're finished. Many times in prayer, I've seen sitting in this place, opening up the pages of my Bible and seeing my Bible filled with manna. Many, many times have we seen remarkable things happen. The inner door. God wants to have a relationship where that you'll simply come to him and ask him. Tell him you want more. So that you have, like Peter, a dangerous shadow. So that as you walk past, your shadow is a spiritual shadow as well as a natural one. Take no thought to what you should eat or drink. Take no thought about what you're going to wear, for your Father in heaven knows your needs. All your needs. We're told to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. This was one of the first verses I ever heard 40 years ago, when I made the decision after reading a book by Oral Roberts to seek first the kingdom of God. And I began to give when I even had no money. And I saw God just add. God can never be outgiven. He can never be outdone. He can never be outpromised. Seeking his kingdom. I prayed my first prayer with Tanya when I took her hand and said, Lord, I'm going to seek first the kingdom. I didn't know what I was talking about. I know I needed help. I knew it was beyond me. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall dwell in the shadow of the Almighty. I'm here one night praying, and I have a sense that I'm in a giant cavern. And I lift my hands up like this, and I can feel feathers. I'm standing in a place where I'm under his wing and have his feathers above me. This is a place to dwell. My wife always is longing for heaven, is longing to dwell in the presence of God. Not too soon, darling, not too soon. Yeah. The shadowing, the overshadowing of his wings. The overshadowing of his presence. Peter learnt to abide in the secret place. And he was a man who I see some similarities between me and him, right? His mouth got him into trouble, lots and lots of things. But I tell you what, he was a brave man. A brave man. When they came to take Jesus, finally cut a servant's ear off with a sword. And I tell you what, it wasn't aiming for his ear. And to pull a sword against the detachment of Roman soldiers would have taken a lot of courage. I believe that God's plan is that he wants heaven to be where we are. He says to Nicodemus, unless a man be born again by water and the Spirit, this double baptism, the physical, natural baptism and the spiritual baptism. In Ephesians 1 and 2, it talks about us being seated in heavenly places with Christ. Don't look for Christ up there. Look for Christ all around you, because you're seated in heavenly places with him. So when you pray, you're praying from heaven's perspective. You're not reaching up to God. You're reaching out from the throne of heaven. You're there. We're located in Colossians 3 at the right hand of God in heaven. We're like Jesus in that sense. Even though we're here in the natural, supernaturally we're elsewhere. The provision and supply for all kinds of people and people's needs come through Jesus. They got their provision from heaven's resources. Remember, the Israelites, they're in the desert 40 years and never had to replace their clothes. You'd want your undies to be in good shape after 40 years, wouldn't you? I don't know what the elastic would be like. They got their provision from heaven. God created us from nothing and made us something. You know, and he created us in a tremendous world where we know nothing of. The supernatural world is all around us. We're surrounded by it. And if you seek to, you can look there. You can go there. Now, we're told you have to be careful that you go by invitation, not by trespass. You don't trespass in those second heaven areas. You go by invitation. Because the second heaven is a place where demons and other strange creatures live, and you've got to go there by invitation. You know, we're talking about a talking snake, angels. We're talking about people coming back from the dead. We're talking about paradise lost and paradise found. Jesus, the new Adam, now free access. God desires the life of heaven to come to earth with you. The spiritual gifts, Jesus walking along and says, Nathaniel, I saw you. I saw you under the tree. That's happened to me more times than I care to remember. Maybe thousands of times. Where you know things, you see things, you hear things. I've been places where I've heard people speaking to each other about their problems and stuff like that. And I don't say that to glorify myself in any way, because I'm a man who has surrendered to God spiritually. I needed help. I needed the gifts. What am I going to do without the gifts? Nothing. I saw you. I'm walking on that land up the Father's house. We've done lots and lots of praying there, lots of things happening. And all of a sudden I see a portal open and ladders fall down and angels crawling up and down. What are you going to do with that? What are you going to do when a man rings you and says, on this sort of day I was in a light plane flying over your land and saw a hole in the cloud? What are you going to do about that? You put that up there. And when I pray for someone with cancer, I'm praying from that perspective. Jesus said, I can do nothing, yet I see the Father doing it. Well, if you can't see the Father, you don't know the Father, how are you going to be able to do anything? In Ephesians 1 it says that in the dispensation of the fullness of time, he might gather together in one over all things in Christ, both which are in heaven and which are on the earth, that he would gather it in Christ. There's a sixth sense in all of this. This is our faith. Faith brings from the invisible spiritual world into the natural. And we have to know what happens between I ask and here it is. I ask and here it is. We know if we look in the book of Daniel, we can see he prayed and an angel came with the answer. And if you read the prayer he prayed, it only takes 3 minutes. That's all it would take. The angel said, the Father, God heard your prayer. Another time Daniel's prayer praised, and it takes 3 weeks for the answer to come. Although the angel said, God answered your prayer. But the prince of Persia resisted him. Now, you're meant to know when the prince of Persia is resisting you. You're meant to know that. A lot of times we explain this off. And I think a lot of unbelief is called the sovereignty of God, where we sweep it underneath the counter and we sweep it under the carpet, because many people have prayed and don't know how to receive the answer. They don't know how to get it. The greatest reason why people are not healed, not delivered, don't have their bills paid, is that they mix unbelief with their faith. If I pray for you, you might not have any faith, but you've got to at least put the car in neutral. You can have the car in fourth gear and expect that my faith is going to pull you over the line. But if you're in neutral, then I'm a chance to be able to pull you over the line, aren't I? Having our senses, as it says, exercised. Activated. Every need, every problem becomes simple, simply a way to connect with God. When something I've seen such healing. I've seen people heal of everything I've ever had. But I want to tell you about like a tale of two women tonight. We used to meet many years ago now, 30 or 40 years, in a little church hall in Plumpton, where there's now a huge church, but it was a little Franciscan church there. And two women came for prayer. One of the women was a witch, a daughter of a witch, and the granddaughter of a witch, and she was fully demonically possessed. And as we started to pray with her, her head almost turned on its axis. It was really, really frightening. We prayed, and she was set free. And many years later, I saw her at a large Pentecostal church down here where she was a deaconess. Another woman we prayed for, she came in and she had been raped and was in a psych centre. And when she was released, at the bus stop waiting for a bus, a man attacked her and cut her throat with a bottle. And she had these terrible scars all around the neck. I was at a Christian conference many years later when she came up and said, "Do you remember me?" And she was the deaconess in another church. Set free and delivered. Tanya and I travelling round with my pastor. We're at a place and a woman speaks in a man's voice to him. He says, "Shut up and come out of her." And she fell on the ground. So Tanya and I are on a prayer team. A woman comes up, speaks to us in a man's voice. We said, "Shut up and come out of her." She fell on the ground and was set free. Monkey see, monkey do. Every time you meet someone who has a problem, you're the answer. You have the potential to connect them with God. God, G-O-D, God. Not some Freudian psychologist that can put another few demons in their life. Morally, physically, financially, emotionally, relationally. All you need is to get quiet in that particular situation and ask heaven what it wants you to do about it. So that you're following heaven's initiatives, not your own thoughts, not your own fears. So that you can pull out of heaven supply, life, resources, provision, so that they can manifest on earth. So the not now becomes a here it is. Whatever is born of God conquers the world. And this is the victory that conquers the world, even our faith. Abraham's told, "Leave your city and go and look for a city whose builder and maker is God." Michael and Livia travelled nearly around this country looking for a city whose maker is God, following the call of the Spirit on their life. Now, God will speak to you through pictures, physical sensations, impressions, the still small voice. God will speak to you. He wants to speak to you. He wants to hear from you. Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. He wants you to lay your hands on the sick and see them recover. He wants you to believe God for tremendous. Look, when I started off, sometimes I had to believe God to pay me rent. Had to believe God to get me some groceries. And the longer I've walked with God, I've had to believe for more and more and more and more and more. We've just been through difficult times when people have given church away in droves. Not just this church, lots of churches. I talk to pastors where a lot of people don't come here all the time now. A lot of people have made the internet their church. But I want to equip you so you can lay your hands on the sick and see them recover. It really is all about him. And when you know that, and when you can surrender and make it all about him, you'll see the miraculous flow out of your hands as if it was yesterday. Just put your hands over your eyes for me. I pray for you for things that your eyes have seen that they weren't meant to see. Things that have burnt themselves into your psyche and hurt you and frightened you and traumatised your life. I pray for every time when you were growing up where you had your face slapped or grabbed or twisted, that you would be healed in the name of Jesus now. I command the cells of your body to release that in Jesus' name. I pray for where you've disqualified yourself from seeing in the Spirit. I break the lie of you believe that you have believed that spiritual gifts are only for the special ones, the holy ones. I pray that you'd open up to the possibilities of God speaking to you in the secret place. And in that secret place you'd hear his words of equipping and blessing. I pray for all of those now within the sound of my voice, for an outpouring of spiritual gifts, for a stirring up, like Paul said to Timothy, stir up the gifts that are with you. Stir them up. I pray that you would walk in the seeing, hearing and touching. Be blessed in his name. Amen.